Shalom and good day, my brothers and sisters. Coming back up here to give you the part that I had told y'all about since we received the understanding of the correct interpretation of Zechariah chapter 1, verse 18 through 21. Now, as I had shared with y'all before, there is a part in Daniel's prophecy that relates to the prophecy that was given unto Zechariah, dealing with the four horns and the four carpenters. And that prophecy that I'm specifically talking about is in Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy. You probably saying, huh? Yes. So through the Father helping me with this timeline, I can actually show you the dates and convert those dates, the biblical dates, to the Roman dates. So you can see how all this lined up. And I'm going to have to tell y'all the reason why the Father gave us increments of these times, such as the 70 weeks, the 2300 days, the 1290 days, the 400 years, the 70 years. He did that because he knew the enemy would change time or try to manipulate the historical records so you will not be able to line up where we are at in time. Okay, for example, we are all familiar with the Roman dates and their time, but we are not familiar, or we don't have knowledge or understanding of the Bible dates and time. Okay, because Daniel even prophesies unto us that the Antichrist, okay, will change times and laws. All right. But before we get started, first I want to give honor to our Father in heaven, to his Son, Yahusha The Messiah, and to our mother, Wisdom. Yes, we have a mother. What's done in heaven is also done in earth. This is why the Messiah talks about her in the gospel, for he said that wisdom shall be justified by her children, meaning that she was not created by the Father in vain. She shall bring forth, or she shall birth the children of the light. That's another mystery that is only revealed when you spend time with the Father. And when you spend time in his word, the Holy Spirit begin to talk to you and reveal the mysteries of the Bible, the King James 611 Bible, as well as the other sacred books such as Jubilees, work of Josephus, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Enoch, 1, 2, 3, 4 of Maccabees, so forth and so forth. Okay, so let's get right into it. Here you see a picture of Daniel's 70 weeks. And I love how they got this clock up here, because that's what it's dealing with. It's dealing with time. Where were we at in time? Because our blessed Messiah prophesies unto us, especially unto this generation, because we are that blessed generation that shall see the coming of the one in the name of our Father. Okay? So he told us, according to the parable of the fig tree, just as we know when summer is near or nigh, because how the fig tree produce her tender leaves, is the same thing with us knowing the coming of the kingdom of heaven and the coming of the Messiah, far as knowing when it's near. Okay, we won't know the day and the hour it's coming, but we'll know we're in that season now. Okay, and how we know this is through watching and praying, observing the things that is happening in the earth as well in the heavens, and keeping records of it. Also, keeping his calendar, going back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Oh yes, we are supposed to keep his calendar. And I'm going to say this in this video. You must keep the calendar that consists of the sun circuit, the moon circuit, and the star circuit. If you do not have these three lights that work together to form one calendar, just as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit work together to form one Godhead, or one divine government, or or one divine family in heaven. Okay? If you don't have it, I'm going to tell you right now, where you are, whether you are a solar keeper or a lunar keeper or whatever you're keeping, if you're not following the instructions by the prophets, such as Enoch, Ezekiel, I'm trying to think who else has some knowledge. You can look in the gospel, you can see evidence of that, and even also in Torah. Okay, if you're not following the Father instructions about his calendar, you will not be able to figure out Daniel's 70 weeks. You will not be able to figure out the 2300 days. You'll not be able to figure out the 1290 days, so forth. Same thing with the dates of the flood. You will not be able to figure it out. Okay? You must have those three lights to understand or to be able to find the correct biblical date. Now, I also want to say this. For those who keep a copy or of the Father calendar, we know there's two components. There is a component of the actual calendar where, you cannot split up a day. You either round down or round up, because we know in the moon circuit she produced 29.5 days. Okay? But in the second part we should be keeping is the actual timing of the moon circuit, the sun circuit, as well as the stars. If we do that, we will begin to understand what Enoch is talking about, and we begin to understand our Father's ways and his thoughts, because he don't allow those small increments of time or that leftover time to be in effect during that day or during that month or during that year. He always have it reserved, and then he bring it back in at the designated time, because he is the Father of time, and he know how to keep things in line and in order, so they won't get out of order, so they won't get out of season. Okay? And to understand what I'm talking about, y'all gonna have to spend some time with him in his word and in those other sacred books, because the children of Israel who live in the land of Ethiopia and the Ethiopians, they kept all the books that we are supposed to read, that the Romans removed and the Protestants removed. Yes. So let's get right into it. First thing first, I got this picture from the early church fathers and Daniel's 70 week manifested sons, and I don't know what else that would say, but their site is, you can go to manifested sons of God AD 70 .files.wordpress.com. So it's the manifested sons of God. All right. The early church fathers and Daniel's 70 week hyphen manifested sons of God. This is where I got that image from. This we do not need. All right. First thing first, because I may be sharing some copyright materials with you, just as written in the book of Ephesians, those fivefold ministries, or the five offices, are the government of the body of Christ, meaning that they are our checks and balances. They also are the check and balances to each other. And according to the book of Ephesians, they are given unto the body, unto the bride, unto the church, to be edified by them. So you will stay on that path of righteousness. In other words, we are educated by them. We are led, or we are under them, because the Spirit of God speaks through them. And the fivefold ministry that I'm talking about, or the five offices, are your apostles, your pastors, your evangelists, your teachers, and your prophets. And in some of these offices, you do have a female component. For the male component of Adam is not complete until he has a female component as his wife. Then she can be what his helpmeet to help him in the ministry of God, as well as the Father will use her at times to speak or to do whatever his will is before his people. Because you know the Father, his ways is not our ways, and his thoughts is not our thoughts. Okay? So, this is the I would say the mystery revealed of Daniel's 70 weeks, because many people misinterpret this prophecy, and he has given us a witness, let us know it has been fulfilled. And that witness is Josephus, as well as the book of Maccabees. Okay? And the relation of the 4 horns and 4 carpenters to it. Okay? There we go. So this is for educational purposes only, for this is to edify the saints and the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Okay? And I want to make this clear. The saints are made up of the bride and the 144,000 Israelites, for you are the first way low, because we are in the wheat harvest now. For the first harvest has passed, which was barley. That was the Messiah and the saints who was delivered from Sheol, the heart of the earth. They were set free, captives set free, so they could go to paradise. Okay, so now we are in the wheat harvest, and there's 2-way loaves, and each loaf has 2 remnants. So the first way load are your saints, which is the 144, and the bride of Messiah. Bride of Messiah are your Israelites and Gentiles, your Jews and Christians, your male and female, your bond and free, your circumcised and uncircumcised, etc. Okay? Your second way load also has 2 remnants. That is your house of Israel and the house of Judah. Okay? Torah backed me up, as well as the prophets and the gospel. Let's get into this meat, y'all. So check out the mystery of the menorah, because it's very important that you understand the mystery of the menorah. I don't need this, so I'm going to take this out. Make sure you check that out, because it does relate to this. Okay, let's get into it. As you see, Google has been fighting with me ever since I've been working on this document, y'all. It's some strange stuff that has been happening, to the point where, y'all, I had to plead the blood upon this document. I was working in Google, because as you see, they was telling me an error occurred while having unsaved changes. Copy your recent edits, then revert your changes. So I had to copy and paste. All right, so let's get into it. Daniel's 70 weeks. It was something I need to read unto y'all, and I'm trying to figure it out. But anyway, let's get started. Daniel 70 weeks. It's gonna come to me, Lord. You're gonna come to me. To set the foundation, we need to go to chapter 7 of Daniel's 70 weeks. Let's see here. Thank you, Lord, for reminding me. Adonai, thank you. Okay, so we're going to go to the 1611 version. And the part that the Father want me to point out. And on the channel, we did the breakdown of chapter 7 and gave the interpretation of that. So that's on the channel too. But we want to go to, let me see. Where was it? If it's not chapter 7, then it's chapter 8. Yeah, let's go to chapter 8. Let's see here. No, it's in chapter 7. So I'm in Daniel chapter 7. Let me read the chapter summary unto you, and then we'll go straight to that verse 2 to set the foundation. Because if you did not understand the Greek captivity, you're really not going to understand the Roman captivity. It's very important. So Daniel chapter 7, chapter summary is, I'm right here, y'all. Daniel's vision of 4 beasts, of God's kingdom, of Yah's kingdom, the interpretation thereof. Okay, so he talks about 4 kingdoms, and those 4 kingdoms does relate to Nebuchadnezzar's image. Very important. So now we're going to verse 20. Highlight that in your Bible. And of the 10 horns that was in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, who look was more stout than his fellows. So this verse right here is talking about the first Antichrist. You want to highlight that. So that horn that has eyes and speak and spake very great things, that means blasphemies, and was more stout than his fellows. That is talking about Antiochus the 4th Epiphanes. If you're not understanding what I'm talking about, you got to watch the 4 horns and the 4 carpenters. Okay, so those who are to sing that, you will understand what I'm talking about. That is your first Antichrist. All right, that verse pertains to him, because when you go to chapter 8, I'm setting the foundation, y'all. Let me get to it. When we go to chapter 8, the chapter summary says, Daniel vision of the ram and he-goat, the 2300 days of sacrifice. Gabriel comforted Daniel and interpret the vision. Okay, so remember about your setting of time. Remember, Daniel was in the time of the Babylonian captivities and the Persians, Medes captivities. Okay, so he is seeing things that is happening before it happens. Okay, so he's seeing prophetic things that are happening before it happens. All right, that's why he didn't understand it. Okay, it was, it was a lot. So when you read this whole chapter in time, I want you to read it in your spare time, because I want to keep this video short. You will learn that verse 21 through 22, I think I may read down a little bit more. Okay, we'll start reading at verse 21. The rough growth is the king of Grecia, so that is Greece. That is dealing with Alexander the Great, and the book of Maccabees talk about him, and Josephus too. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king. So he is the first king. Okay, now that being broken, okay, so we know Alexander died, right? So his kingdom was split in 4. Okay, so now that being broken, whereas 4 stood up for it, 4 kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Okay, so he didn't set them up, they set themselves up. These are the men that was under his reign from Greece. Okay, I believe on the channel it gives you the names of those 4 kingdoms. Verse 23. And in the latter time of their kingdom, when the transgressions are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So again, watch that video and also watch the video dealing with the last Antichrist. For we learn a great thing about Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes, because yes, he did understand dark things, okay, to understand whom he worshiped, all right? And he was a king of fierce continents and shall stand up. So he came in the Seleucian Empire. Seleucid. Well, I should say Seleucid Empire. Okay? Of the four. So he came out one of the four. All right? Verse 24. And his power shall be mighty, but not by his own power. Again, our Father, allow it to happen because of the transgressions of the children of Israel, okay? It was prophesied unto them. But we also learned that his power came from the dark one, okay? Satan. And he shall destroy wonderfully and shall prosper and practice and shall destroy the mighty and the holy people, okay? And verse 25, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart. Remember I tell you about the heart, the belly, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. So when you read the book of Maccabees, I don't know if we're going to talk about it or not in this video, you will learn that he didn't die by natural causes. No, he didn't die by war. He didn't die by another man killing him. He died by the hand of God. God brought him down. And you will hear what he said when God brought him down. Okay? Verse 26. And the vision of the evening and the morning, that's a day, right? Which was told is true. Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. Very important. Many days. All right? And I, Daniel, fainted and was sick certain days. Afterward, I rose up and did the king's business. And I was astonished at the vision, but none understood it. So I believe at that time he was under King Darius. Okay. Here are the side notes for Daniel chapter 8. So when you get to Daniel chapter 9, which we're going to go to for the 70 weeks, you're going to see how all this tie in together. Okay. Then when you get to Daniel's 11, it's going to bring you right back in to the Persian Mede, to Alexander the Great, then to the Seleucid Empire, leading to Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes, and then to the Romans, and then to our time. Okay, and also Daniel chapter 12, touching on the 1,290 days. All right, so let's get going. I did a document, okay? So when we first look at Daniel's chapter 9, dealing with the 70 weeks, we have to break that down to understand what the 70 weeks represent, okay? Because you know how our Father is. When he give us numbers, they represent something. So when you do your research, you will learn that each week represents 7 years. 7 years. So when you take 70 times 7, you would get 490 years. Okay? 490 years. Very important to know this. So by knowing this, what's going to really help you to set your date, because it does get a little confusing when you read chapter 9, because you have to take your time and read it slowly to understand what it's talking about. It's a word problem. We know for sure that the 1 week are 7 years, and that 7 years will have the date when Jerusalem is destroyed, which is 70 AD, or CE. CE means common era, the times of the Romans, or the times of the Gentile. That's what it represents. Okay? So by me knowing this, I knew how to set my date for that week. And the date for that week was 67 AD/CE to 73 AD/CE. That's important. So because I knew that, I could work backwards. All right. So then we get to the 7 weeks. When we take 7 weeks times 7, we get 49 years. And when we read Daniel chapter 9, it reveals how can I say this? It reveals a date, so you know how to set up your date. Now, because I'm working backwards, I already knew that the end of 49 years will end with 66 AD. 66 AD, okay? And in the gospel, they give a date pertaining to the building of the temple. And at that time, it was 46 years in the building. And that 46th and the 46th year landed in this time frame. Okay? This time frame. So, because I'm working backwards, I knew that the end of the 7 weeks ended with 66 AD, CE. I knew that I had to come up with 49 years. 49 years. So 66 AD/CE is my 49th year. So my first year would be 18 AD. Okay? 18 AD. Because the difference between these numbers should be 48. 48. So if I add 48 to 18, you should get 66. All right? Then by me knowing that information, I was able to get my dates for 62 weeks. For when we take 7 times 62, you would get 434 years. All right? And because I'm working backwards, I knew that my end date should be 17 AD. Now here's the tricky part here. Because the heathens do not count the same as the Hebrews or the children of Israel, you have to remember there is no number 0 between 1 BC and 1 AD. There's no 0. So when AD ends, or when AD begins, it begins with 1. And when BC ends, it ends with 1 because it's counting backwards. Do y'all see how it reflects to Satan? Always doing stuff what? Backwards. Opposite of the word. Okay? So you're going to have to write it out. So I knew in the AD period it would have a total of 17 years. A total of 17 years that are left. Okay? And when I took 17 from 434, I got 417 years left. And that's how I knew that it would end at the 417th BC year. Because you're counting backwards. So you're going from 1 BC to 417. 1 BC to 417. Take this time to pause on this part to understand what I am talking about. Okay? Now to the chart above. Now that I had the Gentile dates, and the Father has given me the date when the Messiah was crucified and resurrected. For he was crucified on a V14 in the 5,500 year from Adam. So we are doing time based from Adam. Now, for our Father time, it's a lot more. For a day unto him is like 1,000 years. So for him, it would be in the 11th day, which is in the 11,000 year timeline. 11,000 year section. So when I convert this Adam date, you would get 10,500 years from creation. Okay? And when you count from 10,001 to the 11,000 year, it makes 1,000 years, which is the 11th day to our Father. You may want to take this time now to pause and go back and write down what I just said. Okay? But right now we're going to do it in Adam's time. Okay? This is starting from the day when Adam was created. So the Messiah was crucified on the V14th in the 5,500 year from Adam, which is the 6th day. Okay? And then because I knew that information, I'm jumping the gun. And he resurrected on the V16th in the 5,500 year. And because I used Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, I was able to narrow down the date when he was born and when he was crucified and resurrected. And when you do your calculations, you will learn it is 32 AD because of the sign that was given in heaven. Okay? Remember, first Genesis chapter 14. You're going to have to use that in order to get these dates. You can't come in the mind of a Gentile teachings or the Roman teachings. You have to come in the mind of a Hebrew teaching, of an Israelite teaching. Okay? Because they follow biblical things. All right? So that's how I knew that he was crucified in 32 AD in Aviv. And I believe that would fall in the Roman month April. Okay? So, very important. So this event fell in the 70 weeks. Okay? So I was able to figure out the total. So the dates for the total 70 weeks began with 417 BC and it ended with 73 AD/CE. Okay? All right? And because I knew the date when the Messiah was crucified and resurrected, I was able to get the date of the 70 AD destruction in Adam's time, and it was the 5,538 year. Okay? Very important. And because I knew these dates, I was able to convert 417 BC to 73 CE. And when I converted, I got the 5,052 to 5,041. Okay, which makes sense. 5,541 is greater than 5,500, letting me know that the Messiah had already came and that Jerusalem has been destroyed, because that number is also greater than 5,538. Okay? Very important. So as I'm working backwards, right? Going back to Nebuchadnezzar's image. I didn't have to work backwards because Daniel gave us an important piece dealing with Nebuchadnezzar's image. We know by the living word they was to be in captivity or under the reign of the Babylonians for 70 years. And it started in 608 BC and it ended in 539 BC, because that's when we know when Cyrus came, of the king of the Persian and Medes. Okay? So by me having this date, I knew this is the total of 70 years. Okay? So I was able to convert it to Adam's time. So 608 BC is 4,000 860. Makes sense. It should be less than 5,500. Okay? Because 5,500 is when Messiah was crucified. And then the 70 year we end on 4,930 from Adam. So because I had this knowledge, I was able to figure out the time. Okay? Because we knew Cyrus came in 539. So to figure out the time of the Persian Medes, it started in, I can't get the exact mark for the 539, but I know 538 to 418 gave me a time of 121 years total. Okay, I'm not doing a difference between 538 and 418, but I'm looking at the total time. Okay, so you could probably say 122, but that year has already been added in the 70 years, so that's why it's not included in the 121 years. Okay, when you do math, because I'm starting from 538, I'm not starting from 539. So that gives me an increment of time between the 70 years of them being in the Babylonian captivity under their reign and rule, okay, to the 490 years of the 70 weeks. Okay? And Father do this because he already knew the enemy would try to manipulate time. So if they try to manipulate now, they're going to run into a stumbling block where something ain't going to seem right. So they really can't change too much, because if they start changing too much, it's going to show how they have been manipulating time. They'll have more evidence coming against them. Okay? So this increment of time between the 70 years is 121 years, starting from 538 BC to 418 BC. And the 490 years start at 417 BC to 70 AD. So in this time period, you do have a part of the Persian Medes going to the Greeks' rule and reign, then leading to the Romans. Okay? Very important. We're not going to read everything from the work of Josephus, but I do have to read this because it amazed me that once people get access to the work of Josephus, he is telling you what has already came to pass. But for some reason, people today are still misinterpreting Daniel's prophecy, especially the 470 weeks. So I will read this part. This part comes from the work of Josephus, Antiquity, Book 10, Chapter 11, from section 7. Okay, so I'm going to read starting up here. For the several books that he wrote and left behind him are still read by us till this time. This is Josephus talking to y'all. Okay, because Josephus was present during the time when the Romans and the Jews was at war. Okay, and from them we believe that Daniel conversed with Yah, for he did not only prophesy of future events, as did the other prophets, but he also determined the time of their accomplishment. Let us know when these things become fulfilled. Okay, so we're going to skip down to this part that I highlighted. And just in case, I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see the words. Starting here. He also wrote and left behind him what may manifest the accuracy and undeniable veracity of his prediction. For he saith that when he was in Susa, the metropolis of Persia, and went out into the field with his companions, there was on the sudden a motion and concussion of the earth, and that he was left alone by himself, his friends fleeing away from him, and that he was disturbed, and fell on his face, and on his two hands, and that a certain person touched him, and at the same time bid him rise and see what will befell his countrymen after many generations. So remember that time I gave y'all, many generations past. He also related that when he stood up, he was shown a great ram with many horns growing out of his head, and that the last was higher than the rest, and that after he looked to the west, pay attention y'all, to the west, and saw a he-goat carried through the air from the quarter. Remember the word quarter, very important. That he rushed upon the ram with violence and smote him twice with his horns and overthrew him to the ground. So think about it. He's coming from Greece. That's the west. All right? That's the west. And trampled upon him, that afterwards he saw a very great horn growing out of the head of the he-goat, and that when it was broken off, 4 horns grew up that were exposed to each other, that were exposed to each of the 4 winds. There we go, number 4, right? 4 winds. There's 4 quarters. And those 4 quarters are your east, your south, your west, and your north. And he wrote that out of them arose another lesser horn. This is the little horn, y'all. This is Antiochus the 4th Epiphanes, which, as he said, waxed great. Remember what Daniel said, what we read. That was in chapter 7 and chapter 8. And that Yah showed to him that it should fight against his nation. What did we learn about the 4 horns and the 4 carpenters? Remember that, y'all. And take their city by force, and bring the temple worship to confusion, and forbid the sacrifices to be offered for 1,296 days. Now the correct time, because when you read the whole words and you read the small print, you're going to learn that when other people was translating his writings, they did mistranslate a number, or in other words, they wrote down something wrong from the constantly of, copying his works. All right. But what the proof is, because we know the calendar and we know the months is dealing with the moon, you have to take the number 30 and divide these numbers to figure out how many years and how many months. Because they already gave you the days, okay? They already gave you the days, all right? So in the King James 611 Bible, we have 1,290. So you see, whoever translated this or a copy from the work of Josephus, it was supposed to be 90, not 96, and you'll see why. Another thing the Father's telling me, when you learn about the calendar through Enoch, he's letting us know there is a 13th month produced. Just like Jacob, who is Israel, had 13 children. For the 13th month represent the woman. Okay? The sun represent the he, which is the father and the son. But the moon represent our mother, wisdom. Okay? She is the lesser light. But they, the father and the son, are the greater light. Study the things about the sun, like the attribute of the sun. And once you study that, you will learn that the Father and the Son is nothing to play with. Only the righteous can stand before them. Okay? Very important to know. So you will find that in Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. So when you get your copy of Josephus, they will admit, when you read that small print writing, I read everything, you will learn why these numbers are off. But I thank God for his precepts. I thank God for teaching me about his calendar, understanding about how the moon produced itself sevenfold or 7 times an extra moon or extra month in a 19-year cycle. Also understanding how his calendar is made up of the sun, moon, and stars, and how the moon give us our months to follow, because with dealing with the sun, only the high priest of the Levitical priesthood, or of the sons of Aaron, followed that circuit, and the Dead Sea Scrolls will reveal that. However, the Dead Sea Scrolls do reveal they use the moon for the month for the holy days and holy feast days. Take note what I'm saying, because I'm giving y'all things that they're not telling you for those who have a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Also, my brother, I'm going to repost his video because he gave us the mystery about the 364 days. That is really talking about the moon. Also, there's another thing I might repost that dealing with, and I say repost, go to the channel. Under post, you will see those videos that I'm bringing back up so you can watch them to get more understanding. So those who have a copy of 1st Enoch and 2nd Enoch, you will learn that Enoch do not leave out the moon. And what the work of Jubilees are talking about, when the moon come in 10 days too soon, you will learn that if she does not produce a 13th month, she would get further and further behind until she get out of season. So a 13th month not only regulate a Aviv being in the spring, but it also regulate the Feast of Tabernacles being in the fall. Everything is aligned to agriculture, knowing when to plant seeds, knowing when your raining will start, when your rain will end, knowing about your droughts. Like I said, these earthly things are connected to the heavenly things. So the heavens give the sign, and the earth play it out. So let us go back to reading. Daniel wrote what he saw, these visions, in the plain of Susa. And he had informed us that Yah interpreted the appearance of this vision after the following manner. He said that the ram signified the kingdoms of the Medes and Persians. This is where you have Esther and Mordecai, and then you have Daniel under Darius, but Esther and Mordecai was under a different one. Okay? And the horns, those kings that were to reign in them, and that the last horn signified the last king, and that he should exceed all the kings in riches and glory. That the he-goat signified that one should come and reign from the Greeks, who should twice fight with the Persians and overcome him in battle, and should receive his entire dominion. See about that word dominion. If Adam and Eve did not fail, because both of them disobeyed the commandment of God, of Yah, they will have reign upon the earth, the male and the female. For you must have a king and a queen. You must have balance. Okay? What's done in heaven is done in earth. Okay? So the Greek king received the Persian Mede entire kingdom. That by the great horn which sprang out of the forehead of the he-goat was meant the first king. That's Alexander the Great. Okay? And that the springing up of 4 horns upon it falling off, and the conversion of every one of them to the 4 quarters of the earth. So what's your 4 quarters of the earth? The east, the south, the west, and the north. Signify the successors that should arise after the death of the first king, and the partition of the kingdom among them. So they broke up his kingdom into 4 kingdoms. And that they should neither be his children, nor of his kindred, that should reign over the habitable earth for many years, and that from among them there should arise a certain king that should overcome our nations and their laws. That king is Antiochus IV Epiphanes, and should take away their political government, okay, and should spoil the temple and forbid the sacrifices to be offered for 3 years' time. You want to highlight that. That's in the work of Josephus. So under Antiochus IV Epiphany reign, he's going to forbid the children of Israel from offering these sacrifices, especially the daily sacrifice, for 3 years' time. Very important. And indeed, it so came to pass that our nation suffered these things under Antiochus Epiphanes, according to Daniel's vision, and what he wrote many years before they came to pass. Do y'all hear that? It came to pass. In the very same manner, Daniel also wrote concerning the Roman government. Y'all want to underline that because that's dealing with your 70 weeks, the 490 years. So, Daniel also wrote concerning the Roman government that our country should be made desolate by them. So they are the second nation that brings desolation to them, just like the Babylonians did. Okay? All these things did this man leave in writing, as God has shown them to him, insomuch that such as read his prophecies and see how they have been fulfilled, do y'all hear that, will wonder at the honor wherewith Yah honor Daniel, and may thence discover how the Epicureans are in an error, who cast providence out of human life. That means God do be in your life. He has an effect. Okay? And do not believe that Yah takes care of the affairs of the world, nor that the universe is governed and continue in being by that blessed and immortal nature. Okay? So it's our Father doing all of this. But say that the world is carried along of its own course. Not true. Everything is in line with our Father. Okay? And what he wants. Without a ruler and a curator. So they don't believe that the world and the universe is under the reign or rule of our Father in heaven, Yahuwah, which were it destitute of a guide to conduct, make sure I don't jump lines, it, as they imagine, it would be like ships without pilots. And he said a mouthful. It'll be like ships without pilots, which we see drowned by the winds, or like chariots without drivers, which are overturned. So would the world be dashed to pieces by it being carried without a providence. Providence is dealing with the Most High. Things that's ran by our Father, or under the control of our Father. And so perish and come to naught, or nothing. So that by the aforementioned prediction of Daniel, those men seem to me very much to err from the truth, who determined that Yahuwah exercises no province over human affairs. For if that were the case, that the world went on by mechanical necessity, we should not see that all things will come to pass according to his prophecy. Now as to myself, I have so described these matters as I have found them and read them. But if anyone is inclined to another opinion about them, let him enjoy his different settlements without any blame from me. So in this one paragraph I just read to y'all, he already affirmed to us or confirmed to us that the Greeks and the Romans fulfill the prophecy that was given unto Daniel dealing with the 2300 days and the 1290 days. Let us keep going. So we did the breakdown of the 7 weeks, but I want to show you more confirmation. Okay? When the Messiah was told that, what do you mean you're going to tear this temple down, build it in 3 days, when this temple has been in the building for 46 years? So, by knowing that, I was able to calculate. Okay? According to the Bible and history, I learned that King Herod the Great had restored, or was making upgrades to the house of Yah, the temple. And that work started in 17 BC. 17 BC. So that's your first year. All right. So I had to figure out what number would lead me to the 46th year. To find that out, I had to subtract, because these numbers are counting backwards, 17 years from the 46th year. And when I did that, I got 29 AD, which lines up, y'all, to biblical prophecy. And the end of the 7 weeks ended in the 49th year. Remember, 7 times 7 is 49 years, right? So the difference between the 46th year of the building of the temple, when the Messiah said that I would tear this temple down and build it in 3 days, he was not talking about the building itself. He was talking about his body, dealing with the bride of the Messiah and the 144 who are the saints. That's what he was talking about. For now the Spirit of Yah live in our hearts, our belly. It no longer lives in a building. This is why our Father in heaven took away the house of God, which is the temple, took away the daily sacrifice, and took away the holy city to get us to understand we are to convert or to transition to worship him now in spirit and in truth, because with the first covenant, it would condemn us because we were trying to keep it by the flesh. So in the new covenant, we are now keeping it by the Spirit. Okay? This is how we're able to fulfill everything, because he who lives in us has crossed every T and dot every I. He that live in us, may us be perfected or perfect in our Father's eyesight. This is why we have no spot or wrinkle. This is why we have no blemish. We're just like that perfect lamb. Okay? That is offered as a sacrifice. All right? So by me knowing this, 46 subtract 49 is 3 years. So I add 3 years to 29. 3 years plus 29 AD give me 32 AD. And that's when he was crucified and resurrected. Okay? So when you look at King Herod the Great, how I was able to figure out it was the 17 BC, which is the 18th year, okay, from his reign. You have to go back and read the work of Josephus and look at the sign in heaven and get those dates, because in the 37 BC, he was made king of the Jews by the Romans, but he didn't, how can I say? He had to get the kingdom under him. So when you read the work of Josephus, started in 37 BC to 34 BC, you will learn that he besieged Jerusalem and he got them under his reign. So this is why from a Hebrew point of view, we will look at him starting reigning from 34 BC. So from that period of time, I knew that was the first year. And to figure out the 18th year, I would take 1 minus 18 to get the difference is 17 years. And 17 minus 34 BC would give me 17 BC. Okay? 17 BC. And the 34th reign, or the last year of his reign, because there was a sign in heaven, there was an eclipse, again the moon, and it happened on January 1 BC, and I believe it was on the 10th day. And this is how I knew King Herod died 1 BC. Not 3 BC, not 4 BC, but 1 BC, based on Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Okay? Same thing when we look at the first week of Daniel's 70-week prophecy. We take 7 times 1 week, we get 7 years. So we know in the midst, right? Again, the midst, the 4, right? The 4th year. We knew that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Romans completely. Not one stone was left unturned, as the Messiah prophesied unto us. And it happened in the 70 AD year of the Romans, which is what? The midst. So what they call the 7-year war between the Romans and the Jews started at 67 AD and it ended at 73 AD in Masada. Okay? Last thing I'm going to go to before we read the scriptures. This is very important, especially when you're looking at the reign of the Babylonians over the Jews or the children of Israel. We're given another clue in Matthew chapter 1 because it tells us starting from Abraham, because he received what? The covenant and the promises. And that promise dealt with the promised seed coming through his bloodline. And meaning that Christ would be born in his bloodline, which was passed on to Isaac. Then Isaac passed on to Jacob, who was named Israel. And Israel passed on to the tribe of Judah, which passed on to Boaz, then to David, and so forth. So if we count from Abraham to King David, that is 14 generations. And I will read that scripture for you so you can see, but it's very important. It's giving us a date and a timeline here. For when you align the scriptures, you can really see what start when and with who, especially with the Babylonian reign and understanding the 70 years. So the next generation of 14, which is the second 14, will start from King Solomon to King Joachim, also known as Jehoiakim, also known as Eliakim. Okay, and you can read about him in Matthew chapter 1, verse 11, 12, 2 Kings chapter 23 through 34, and chapter 24, because you're going to learn that he came like a client king under the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar. So to keep this video short, you're going to have to read that in your spare time. Now, dealing with Babylon, you can also read with Jeremiah chapter 36, verse 27 through 31. This is when they start being under the Babylonian reign. Okay? Remember, captivity don't always mean that people have to go or be captured first. It also can start with a king reigning over your nation who's not a king of your kinsmen. So Jehoiakim became like a client king. So in Matthew chapter 1 verse 17 it says that so all the generation from Abraham to David are 14 generations. And then from David unto the carrying away into Babylon. Do y'all see that? So that's how I knew I need to go back and read about Joachim and see what was going on with him. Because I believe King Nebuchadnezzar got him and some others and took them to Babylon in the 3rd year because he was being disobedient. And at that time, the Father raised up Nebuchadnezzar to be his servant to punish the children of Israel. Okay, so then from David until the carrying away into Babylon. All right, so that makes the second 14 generations. All right, take this time now to pause your screen so y'all can see how I'm getting these numbers. Okay, and 14 generation, okay, are 14 generations. So from David until the carried away into Babylon are 14 generations. And from the carried away into Babylon to the Messiah are 14 generations. So it's telling y'all something here. Meditate on this. All right. So when you read Matthew chapter 1, it says this about Jacob or or Jehoiakim. Sorry, y'all, my tongue. And Josiah begat Joka, Jok, sorry, Jeconias and his brethren. About the time they was carried away to Babylon. So in your side note, it will read this. Some read Josias begat Jechim, and Jechim begat Jeconias. And that is right, because when you go back to OT and you look at that bloodline, you will see Josias begat Jechim, and then but Jechim begat Jehoconias. So if you don't have that, you will not get 14, you will get 13. Very important. That's why I say that 16 and 11 is so important. Then verse 12 say, and after they were brought to Babylon, Jeconias begat Salatiel, and Salatiel begat Zerubbabel. And you know that's important because when they come out of Babylonian captivity, Zerubbabel becomes like a governor or some type of leader unto them. And you can read about that in 1 Chronicles chapter 3 verse 16 and 17 dealing with the bloodline. Okay? So now we're going to go to, let me go to this chart here. Y'all, like I said, I had a lot of projects I've been working on hard for y'all. So to give you understanding why 608 BC is your first year, and Jehoiakim represent number 28, and he is in the second 14th generation. He reigned for 11 years at the age of 25, and he became a servant to King Nebuchadnezzar for 3 years. As I said, to understand what the Father is saying about the Babylon captivity, it is a word problem. And you have to read the scriptures and take your time and write these things out. So that's how I know that I know, based on Matthew chapter 1 and based on 2 Kings chapter 24. That's how I knew when the Babylonian captivity started there. Other verses you can read is 2 Kings chapter 23 verse 34, 36. Chapter 24 of 2 Kings verse 1 through 7. 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verse 5. 1 Ezra chapter 1 verse 39 through 40. Matthew chapter 1 verse 11 and verse 17. And the work of Josephus in the book of Antiquities of the Jews. You can find it in book 10, chapter 6, section 3. That's how I knew that I knew. Also, in the year of 606 BC, that's your third year, because 608 is your first year, 607 is your second year, and then 606 is your third year. So in the third year of Jechim, son of Josiah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon besieged Jerusalem. So if you notice here that the Hebrews were already calling him King of Babylon. Again, you got to see it from their point of view. So more you can read about that is in 2 Kings chapter 24 verse 1 through 2 and 10. 2 Chronicles chapter 36 verse 6. Daniel chapter 1 verse 1. And Matthew chapter 1 verse 11 and 17. And again, I'm just reinforcing or reiterating that you definitely need to read 2 Kings chapter 24. Now we get into the part where it is getting confusing. Okay, so when we maybe read Daniel's chapter 9 and the way it's written, okay, for the chapter, somebody says this: Daniel, considering the time of captivity, making confessions of sins and praying for the restoration of Jerusalem. Gabriel, who is an angel, right, informed him of the 70 weeks, okay? And we already know the 70 weeks are 490 years. That started in 417 BC and ended in 73 AD. So I'm showing that I'm in chapter 9. The part that get confusing is the way the 434 years or the 62 weeks are written, okay? So you really have to take your time and read it slowly, okay? I'm going to start at 23. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came forth. So he's telling Daniel, at the beginning of his supplications, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee. Do you see how Daniel prayers were being answered? Because he was trying to get understanding about the 70 years, because now he was in the Persian Mede captivity, meaning that the Persian was reigning over him and his people, and they was taken to the country of Persia, so forth. But also you will learn that there was some Israelites that still remain in Babylon, okay? But however, you see how the Father answered his prayers, because he was trying to get understanding, when does the 70 years end? For thou art greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. And the reason why he's great beloved, because he was obedient. He did not worship the gods of the Babylonians nor of the Persian Mede, even when his life was threatened to be taken away. Okay? There are side notes you can read for verse 23, but we're going to keep on going. So verse 24 says this: 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. So the children of Israel, Jerusalem, to finish the transgression. So they had sinned. Okay, when you read the book of the Kings, you saw how they worship other gods. You saw how they committed idolatry, which meaning that they committed adultery against our Father in heaven, for he is their Isha, he is their husband. So they cheated on him. Keep in mind, they was under the reign of the men. And I'm saying this because some of our brothers forget that it was the men who led the nation of Israel into idolatry, okay, and into spiritual adultery against the Father. All right, and I'm saying this because we got to come in the whole volume of the book. We are all at fault. I don't care if you are male or female. I don't care if you circumcised or uncircumcised. We have to take accountability for our wrongdoings, for our transgressions, for our faults or offense. Okay? Stop blaming the other. Just look at yourself and humble yourself. Okay? So we learn in this verse that they are to complete, they are to complete the transgression and to make an end of sins. This is very important. And to make reconciliation for iniquity. That means wrongdoing. Iniquity means wrongdoing. So we got to put an end of sins. They need to make a reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness. How's that's going to take place? You got to look at the coming of Messiah. Because he has to establish a renewed covenant for this to take place. And to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. Okay? There are some side notes for that verse as well, and you can read that in your spare time. So notice here, and to anoint the most holy. Okay? We know Messiah is the most holy. He had to prove himself, and you will read about that in Isaiah chapter 53. So the same for him. We two saints, we have to prove ourselves, and this is why saints means most holies. For we have that same anointing upon us. Messiah set the example of the second Adam. Verse 25, and here it goes. This is the part that trips people up. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince, shall be 7 weeks. So that was the part that I ought to show y'all. Because you say you had to take your time and break it up. Remember in the time of King Herod, he was the one who gave the commandment, to make these upgrades and so forth. Okay? Because it has to come in 49 years, because you have the coming of the Messiah. This is how I know that I know what that particular verse is talking about, what I showed y'all earlier. Right here, the 7 weeks. Okay? Which is 49 years. Now, going back to that verse, all right, we see a semicolon, right? So we got to pause, we got to stop. But this is relating to what we just read before. So when you see and, it's saying, in addition to this, also 62 weeks. That is your 434 years. The street shall be built again, and the walls, even in troublous times. Now, when many people read this, and when you see that a street shall be built again, it means that the breach or ditch shall be built again. I think I got it right. Wait a minute, it might say shall return and be built, and dealing with the wall, the breach or ditch. And then in the times of trouble, it say in strains of time. In strains of time. That's your side note. But a lot of people, when they see even in troublous times, they think about the Persian Medes. It don't line up to the Persian Medes, and you'll see why. When you read 1st and 2nd Maccabees, I have the verses showing you how they had to rebuild the walls, even in troublous times. This is why it's so important that we read these other sacred books that the Romans and the Protestant remove. Because if we don't, we're going to err in these biblical prophecies. Okay? So when we go back to the document here, and we look at the 430 weeks, it is adding to the 7 weeks. Because it's saying, when you look at a semicolon, what comes after the semicolon is going to relate to that first sentence. Okay? So, in addition to what we read here, it said, know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem. Even in the days of the Maccabean, there was a commandment that was given, even by the kings, the Greek kings, to rebuild and restore Jerusalem with the temple. Remember your feast of dedication, which is Hanukkah, the Feast of Lights. That place had to be sanctified for what the Greeks, who are Gentile, did. They profaned it. They made it unholy. And they brought the abomination of desolation, which was Zeus, Satan. Okay? So unto the Messiah, the Prince. So you got to add the 434 years to the 7 years. If not, it won't be enough time to the Messiah. It won't be. And I have a chart to prove it. Okay? So here I'm just showing y'all the breakdown of the 49 years. So for the first year, you got 7 years. For the second year, it's starting the 8th year and into the 14th year and so forth. Take this time to pause your screen to look at that. Then for the 434 years, like I said earlier, 417 BC is your first year. And, oh, I had that part added in. But the 434th year is going to end. Let me go up. While I'm here, I know I keep jumping around, but I'm sorry. To find out with the building of the 46 years, you can find it in John chapter 2, verse 20. St. John chapter 2, verse 20 of the gospel. And it relates to Daniel chapter 9, verse 25. Okay? Daniel chapter 9, verse 24, we already talked about that, is dealing with the 490 years. Okay? Because they had to pray for their sins, but it's going to lead to an everlasting salvation, a everlasting righteousness, which is Messiah. So when we add the 7 weeks to the 434 years, it's going to start from, I need to go here so y'all can see what I'm talking about, 417, okay? To 17 AD. That's your 434 years. But by me adding the 7 weeks, which is 49 years, it's going to take from 417 BC to 66 AD. 66 AD. And when we look at this period of time from the Maccabees, because you still got a part of the Persian Medes in this, but when you look at the Greeks, starting with Alexander, he came in, I think was, let me see here. Let me go to my Persian Mede thing. Hold on, y'all. I got to find it. Oh, I know what I did. Hold on. Sorry about that, y'all. I found it. It was actually in the same document. When we look at the Greeks came in 330 BC, dealing with the Seleucid Empire. Okay, of the 4 horns, one of them rose up like a little horn, or Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes came out of one of the 4 horns, and that horn was dealing with your Seleucid Empire, the empire that was started by Antiochus the Great. I think the third, but it's either Antiochus the Great or Antiochus the Third, started by their father. Okay, but the Greeks came in 330 BC, and then the Romans came in 63 BC. This is done with Pompey, because that's during the time of the Maccabean rule, or you can say the Asmodean reign. Okay, so that's when the Romans came in for dealing with the Greeks. Because remember, the 10 brass nails represent the Greek kingdoms becoming a part of the Roman Empire. For when you study your sacred word, you'll learn they are cousins. Both the Greeks and the Romans are not a nation of antiquity. They are the youngest nations that came into the earth when you compare it to Genesis chapter 10 and to the children of Israel. They came later by the creation of the sons of Edom, mixing himself with the sons of Japheth. Okay, big difference. That's how the 2 nations were created. But they worshiped the same God, which was Satan. That's how Hellenization came forth, was birthed from the Greeks, So for the Greeks, they call Satan Zeus. For the Romans, which is the same God, they call him Jupiter. Okay? Very important. All right. So here, that's a big chunk of time of your 434 years. Okay? So we was coming out of the Persian Medes. Okay? Into the Greeks. So Alexander the Great conquered the last Persian Mede king in 330 BC. All right, not that much difference. Yeah, I did put the difference in from 417. In 417, did I put it here? 417 minus 330, we would get 87 years difference, or a grand total would be a total of 88 years. But 87 years later, you would have the Greeks to come in your 434 years of your 62 weeks. So here in this picture here, you will have the head of Nebuchadnezzar, going back to Nebuchadnezzar's image, because this is all important, y'all. Dealing with the timeline, you will have 70 years. So remember that 539 is a part of the 7 years, 70 years. Then we come to the Persian Medes, who are represented by the breast, which is your chest and arms. They have 209 years. This is dealing with the time when the children of Israel is under their reign. Okay, again, you have to look at this from a Hebrew point. Because remember what we talk about, the revelation of the 7 heads. The common denominator of the 7 heads of the dragon and of the beast is that you have the children of Israel being reigned by them. Yes, being reigned by them. So when you look at the 6th head, which is the runic head, which is Rome, which is the iron, because the iron has the power and authority from Satan, who is the beast. Who is the dragon? I'm sorry. Who is the dragon, that old serpent? Okay. You will have not only the children of Israel now, but you also will have the bride of the Messiah and the 144. Okay. You got to look at the common denominators here, because these are the people who are in covenant with the Most High and his Son. All right. So the breast and arm is 209 years. So when we get to the belly and thighs, which are the Greeks, is 267 years. Okay. Like I said, I'm going to be going kind of fast now because I don't want to bore you with all these numbers, but it's so important for us to know this. Now we get to the time of the Maccabees. And to make this short, when you do your studying, you will learn that Jerusalem was besieged by Antiochus IV Epiphanes in 170 BC, which is the 143rd year of the Greeks or the Seleucid Empire. Take this time, y'all, as I go through these sections, to pause your screen to get the reference. Okay? And before we go further on the breakdown, Father want me to go ahead and finish out Daniel 9. So when we read this verse here, let me see here. This verse, 25, it's important to know you have to add your 62 weeks to your 7 weeks, which is 69 weeks, to get the time period that include the Greeks, which pertains to the Maccabees, to the time of the Messiah. Even in the time of the Messiah, or I'm gonna say the time of the time of the Jews under the Roman rule, they had periods of time they had to rebuild the wall too. So now you see why all this have to be added together. And you'll see in the chart as we go through it. The next verse we're going to look at is verse 26, where it says, and after 62 weeks, okay? That's that 62 weeks. So after this, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. So let me give you the interpretation. After the 62 weeks, so that 62 weeks is going to include the date of the Messiah being taken out of the earth. Because remember, he was crucified and he resurrected and he returned unto his Father and sat on the right hand of him. Also, you want to read Isaiah 53 to get an understanding why he is not cut off. because this verse said that he's not cut off, not pertaining to himself. So you got to understand what that means. He told his disciples that they will always have the poor, but they need to take time with him while he's there in the physical. Okay? Remember those verses. So we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 53. So if you would take 32 AD as your 434th year, you would end up with 402 years. 402 years. So that would fall from your Persian Mede still, because the Greeks don't come into until 330 BC. Okay. So you'll be looking at 402 BC to 32 AD or CE. And that would give you 62 weeks. So like I said, this is a word problem. Okay. So it's close to about 400 years. I kept wondering why they keep talking about this 400 years stuff. But it's close to the 400 years. So when we look at Isaiah 53, it gives us the meaning of what it means that he's not cut off for himself. So when you read Isaiah, I recommend that y'all read this from the beginning to the end, because it would give you a greater understanding of what Daniel prophecies are and what they mean about the transgressions and the reconciliations of our iniquity and the everlasting righteousness. Okay, so when we read, we're going to look at verse 8. Verse 8. He was taken from prison and from judgment. And who shall declare his generation? So you remember that law about if your brother died, you have to raise a seed to carry on his name in the earth. He didn't even have a wife. So he had no one to carry on his name in the earth as an heir. Therefore, this is why the Father gave him the bride, because we bear his name now. So that's how his name is still carried forth in the earth in the spiritual way. Again, you have to understand Torah to understand this question. Okay, when it say here it was taken from prison, not only dealing with what he went through with the Sanhedrins and with Pontius Pilate, but it's talking something deeper here. It's talking about how he went to Sheol, but remember, death couldn't hold him, hell couldn't hold him, because he was righteous. They murdered an innocent person, and he fulfilled everything in Torah, cross every T and dot every I, and this is why he could take the saints out of that holding place. Because remember, he preached unto them, but Jezebel still did not repent. But anyway, this is why he could take them out of captivity and bring them into paradise, because he became the second Adam. So he used the same device that Satan used against our father and mother. Because the cross comes from a tree. It is made from a tree. So Satan thought he had him. He thought he would remain dead, in other words. Because remember about death, that's another enemy of ours that came from sin. All right? But that's the last enemy that will be taken down by the Messiah when he comes. But anyway, death could even hold him. Remember what the words say in the book of Corinthians, chapter 15. I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 15, and the book of Hosea. Death could not hold him. Okay? So that's what this is saying. He was taken from prison and judgment. Okay? Because he was innocent. So death could not hold him. Hell could not hold him. That way, Satan could not possess him. He couldn't have his soul. Okay? So he ascended to the heavens to paradise, and he sat on the right hand by his father, because his father told him to rest until his enemies become under his footstool. That's in the book of Songs. Okay? For he was cut off out of the land of the living for the transgression of my people who were stricken. Do y'all hear that? So it's not dealing with him, but he was taken out, okay, of this world that we live in, because he fulfilled all the prophecies. He completed the work. He anew the covenant to bring in the everlasting righteousness, or righteous everlasting. Okay? Y'all see the connections. In the side note of that verse 8, there is a side note, and you probably want to read that when you get a spare time, of the 16:11. Verse 9. And he made his grave with the wicked. Okay? Think about how he stood with the two thieves on the cross. One repented, and the other one was wicked. Okay? But anyway, both were wicked because of their transgression. They was thieves, right? So the verse goes on to say, he made his grave with the wicked and with the rich in his death. Okay? Think about how he was buried. They anointed his body and they put it in a new tomb where no man lay. That was like a tomb for a rich person. Because he have done no violence, neither was any deceit in his mouth. So he didn't commit a sin. Okay? So this not, like I said, when he was cut off from the land of the living, it's not because of what he did. He was doing it for us. He was making our reconciliation. He was making our atonement so we can be saved, and so we can be in the kingdom of heaven that is coming, that will last for eternity. Here's the side notes for that chapter. So, take pause the screen. Now let us go back to Daniel's. So that's very important. Remember to read Isaiah. Now the people of the prince is dealing with the son of Vespasian, who was the emperor of Rome, and that was, I think it started with T. I'm trying to remember his name. It'll come. But he is the people of the prince. Remember, the Father will use a Gentile to carry out his judgment in the earth. So the son of Vespasian, who is the Roman emperor, sent his son, I guess it was Titus, but I can't remember, to destroy Jerusalem and the sanctuary. And the end of it shall be with the flood. That means he's going to bring an army. That same thing with Revelation 12, when the dragon opened his mouth, he cast out a flood. That means he's going to send an army, just like the ancient Pharaoh did in the book of Exodus. There's nothing new underneath the sun, y'all. Even Isaiah, the prophet Isaiah, will confirm it to us that a flood represent an army. And this verse go on to say, and unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. So we know that's dealing with the 7 weeks. The 7 years, which are 1 week. Okay, it ended in 73 A.D. But the destruction, which is what? The 4th year, which is the middle, the prince of the people, which is the Roman prince, the son of Vespasian, okay? He brought the end of the war desolation. And that determined date was for what? The 7-year war. Starting from, let's go back to our sheet. Okay, let's go up here. Starting from 67 AD, Titus or Vespasian's son came in 7 AD, which is the 4th day, right? Or the 4th year, judgment. Okay. And then it ended in 73 AD. Okay. Verse 27. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That's 7 years. Now we have a colon. Okay. And in the midst of the week, what is that midst of the week, y'all? That fourth week. That fourth year, forgive my tongue, which is 70 AD. He shall cause. Covenant means what? Promise. He going to confirm what the Father prophesies to all the prophets about the destruction of Jerusalem. If y'all get the work of Josephus, y'all, I highly recommend y'all read it, because it was a lot of signs he showed unto them that the destruction of Jerusalem is going to come to pass. Even Yahusha The Messiah prophesies about the destruction of Jerusalem, and he said not one stone be left unturned. Okay? So it was a promise. And he used Titus to confirm it, the son of Vespasian, the Roman emperor. Okay? He shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. Yes, because there have been no more sacrifices done by the Levitical priesthood, the sons of Aaron. And for the overspreading of abominations. Okay? They too brought their abomination of desolation in. I know it was an eagle, and also dealing with Jupiter, something with Jupiter. Okay? For the overspreading of abomination, he shall make it desolate. So even the prophets talking about how Jerusalem is desolate, it's like a wilderness now. Okay? Not going to be inhabited by nobody. So this is why we keep saying the Jerusalem of the Jebusite and not the Jerusalem of the Amorites, because the Jerusalem of the Amorites is known as modern day Jerusalem. The Jerusalem of the Jebusite is known as Telerod. That's what we have so far learned at this time. Okay? But like I said, read the OT and you will see there are 2 Jerusalems in the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan. So he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolation. So it's going to remain desolate until you get to Ezekiel chapter 40 to 48. For after Messiah reigned for 1,000 years, because he has to prepare the way for the Father to come. Then the Father would come with the new Jerusalem that is not made by man's hand, in the 10th week of Enoch 10-week prophecy, which fall in the 15th day. For the 15th day is the first day of the 3rd week. For we now are in the 2nd week. Remember I told you about 7? So 7 days of Yah must pass, which is 7,000 years. And when we get to the 15th day, which fall in line with Enoch 10 week of the 10-week prophecy, then the Father will bring the new Jerusalem, and he will also bring the eternal judgment, where he will judge angels, stars, and man, all that had disobeyed him. And they shall receive their eternal judgment. This is why the lake of fire, the eternal lake of fire, is known as the second death. For hell is the first death and is worse. But then what's worse than that is the eternal lake of fire. Okay? And that falls in the 15th day of our Father's timeline. Very important. In our time now, we are in the 7,400 and let me see where we at. 7,494 years. Write down what I'm saying. 7,494 year. So the beginning of the 8th week, which is what 8 represent new beginning, represent Jubilee, returning that what belonged to the righteous, and getting the wicked in check. Okay. The 7,500 year from Adam is the 8th week of Enoch 10-week prophecy. Right now we're in the 7th week, and he prophesies unto us that the apostate generation shall do apostate deeds, and it shall increase to the point that it stinketh and it rises to heaven. And this is why you're seeing all this stuff that is happening now in our government, and also in the earth and the heavens. Disasters, wars, all that stuff that the Messiah prophesies unto us. So we are coming to the end, y'all. But as one more bang, the last Antichrist has to reign for 3.5 years. And that would pertain to your last harvest. Those who make it. Those who come out of the iron furnace of Egypt. As a bread or a harvest that is ready to be stored in the barnyard, so we can rest in winter. But for the wicked, there's no rest in winter, only but pain, suffering, and death. No mercy, no grace. Okay? So please write these things down. I'm telling you, I know this video is kind of lengthy, but I am summarizing a lot of this information for you so you can understand. So when you go to the time of the Maccabees, who are the 4 carpenters, take this time to pause your screen, because I did add some things from Josephus, but giving you the correct period of time, like what is in Olympe 145th year. Okay, so I'm letting you know where those dates fall. So far, even what their history have, their start of that empire, the one that's dealing with the Seleucid Empire, it started in 312 BC and it ended in 63 BC with Pompey, because Pompey did conquer them too. Okay, so that would be your first year. So that's how you know your dates when you read the book of Maccabees, how you convert it. So we know the first year is 312 BC. So if your year is 145, 1 subtract from 45 is 44. So that's a difference of 144 years. So you take that 144 minus 312. Okay. You get 168 BC. That's how you figure it out. Okay. So the date when they took away the daily sacrifice was the 25th day of Caslu, which is the Hebrew night month. This is why it is so important that we learn our Father's calendar. Because if you don't have this foundation, it'll be hard to convert biblical dates to Roman dates. You must have an understanding of both. Okay? So when they was able to take it back, they was able to take it back in 3 years. 3 plus 168 BC would give you what? 165 BC, which is the 148th year, and it happened on the same day, the 25th day. So they had Hanukkah. Okay? Then they had to cleanse the temple again in 162 BC. So 3 minus 165, because we're counting backwards, right? In BC. We get 162 BC. And it leads to an event that happens in 161 BC of Adar, dealing with Nicanor. And we are supposed to keep a memorial of that day, because how the Father helped our ancestors to overcome these wicked Greek and their friends or whoever joined them, who was causing great sufferings, pains, oppression upon them. Okay? So in the book of Maccabees, it's going to show you that they kept some of these dates as a day of remembrance. It goes back to Numbers chapter 10, verse 10, as you blow your shofar in the days of gladness, because these days are reflecting how our Father in heaven helped us to overcome the wicked by what? Faith and works, and having a righteous heart. This is why I'm stressing y'all to read 1st and 2nd, 3rd and 4th Maccabees to prepare yourself, because y'all, at this time now, we are still in our trials and tribulation. He's trying to refine us. He's trying to perfect us. He's trying to get us to come out perfect like those two-way loaves. That's what he's trying to do. Okay? Let me see where I'm at. So I'll tell you about the second cleansing. Let me see where we at, y'all. Yeah, which is down here. This area right here. This part I'm going to do at a different time. Okay? And another interesting that I learned, we have the date when Antiochus IV Epiphany died. In the Hebrew date, he died on the 25th day of the 9th month, known as Caslu, in the 164 BC year, which is the 149th year. This is the same year when the Maccabees pulled down the abomination of desolation from the altar of Yah, and they surrounded the sanctuary with high walls as before. Like I said, even that period of time, they was trying to repair the walls to keep the wicked out. Okay? When you look at your 1,290 days that we already talked about, again, this is where the calendar come in. You have to be aware when your leap year come in. So I just did a rough estimate. Because some of your years would be 390, some of your years would be 360. So when we break down the 1,290 days, it should come around to be 3 years and 6 months, which are 3 years and a half. And I had it starting around, okay, I got to go down a little further. I have those years starting around 168 BC because that's where it first started. And you want to start from the 25th day. Okay? So when I did the math, it ended in Zeph on the 25th day. But I am going to go back and recheck my numbers. But I do know that the 1,290 days pertain to when the daily sacrifice was ceased. And you can read that in Antiquities chapter 10 verse 11 and 7, and also in Daniel chapter 12 verse 11. Very important. It also dealt with Antiochus IV Epiphanes, taking them by force and defaning, and deholding, and profaning the temple, the house of Yah, the house of God. Okay? So you can get a date, but you have to understand the Father's calendar, and you have to use his 3 lights. If not, you're going to get something wrong. Now, dealing with the 2,300 days, okay? Again, you got to know when your leap years are, and it's based on Enoch Formula 358, because you will notice that the moon would come in 10 days too soon. This is why the heavens produced the 13th month, to put her back in order, in line. So if you use the 358 rule, you will know when the heavens will do that. And you will keep your feast days in the right seasons. Okay? It should be lined up. So example, Passover should be in spring. There was a change with Pentecost known as Shavuot, your wheat harvest, because of the covenant that he made with Moses and the children of Israel. So it went from the 3rd month to the 4th month, because 4 represents something very important. So you count 7 complete Sabbaths, which is 7 complete weeks. And then after that, you count 50 days, because by then the wheat would be ripened. Okay? So that would happen in summertime. Then you have fall. The Feast of Tabernacles must happen in fall, because it's dealing with the last ingathering of all your harvest, whether it's fruits, wheat, barley, whatever, so you can get prepared for winter. So again, all this lines up with agriculture. Okay? So, like I said, I just did an estimate of when the leap years may be. It's not perfect, but at least I'm getting an idea when these dates supposed to be for the 1,290 days and for the 2,300 days. For the 2,300 days, you will learn, because you have leap years. Like I said, some years will be 360, and some would be 390. Okay, so you will come out to have 6 years and 2 months and 20 days. So again, that 20 days is representing how the moon is getting behind. So from 3, it'll be in that 3rd year, it'll be 10 days behind. When you get to that 5th year, it'll be 20 days behind. Okay, and I think it added up to be 50. But by the time you get to the 8th year, it'll be 80 days behind. That's if you do not follow the heavens when it adds that 13th month. And I'm going to say this, the Jewish do not follow the 358 rule or Enoch prophecies. First Enoch and second Enoch will give you the understanding of how to do the calendar. Very important. And he talk about all the 3 lights. Not this one light, but all the 3 lights. Let us keep going. So for example, if you go from the 25th day of Caslu to 168 to the 25th day of 165, you will have 3 years of looking at the difference. Okay? 3 years. And I noticed that the 2300 day is going to land on the 13th day of Adar in 161 BC. And that's dealing with them taking it down, Nicator. This is why they have a feast of remembrance from every year dealing with that. So these dates is going to line up with something important biblically that you see in the King James 1611 Bible and in the work of Josephus. Okay? And it's going to reflect too what Enoch was talking about the 358 rule. But remember, the Jewish people don't follow that, because there are some years they add a 13th month when they ain't supposed to. And when we add ours 13 month, they don't. So, they on a different time schedule from us, from the Israelites. All right? There's a difference. Take this time to pause your screen when I was telling you about how I did the math for your 13th day of Adar, because when you start from the 25th day, it's saying you're going to add 3 years to that. So that's day 1 that's not included in your account. All right? This is how I know that I know, based on the math. All right? So when you read Antiquities chapter 12, book 12, chapter 10, section 5, when you read about the 162 event, by the time you get to Adar will fall in your next year. Think about how we do our calendar. Adar falls in between February or March. So Aviv will fall in between March and April. So it does the same thing with, what's his name? Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes. He died in the 9th month of the Hebrew calendar on the 25th day. So his date of his death would be between November and December. At this time, I got December the 10th. But I'll go back and check my records. These are the scriptures that pertain to the wall. Okay? So you definitely want to read that. Antiochus the Fourth Epiphanes did do something in Jerusalem. I think they built a wall or something. But that's in the 1st chapter. But you want to write this down. Take this time to pause your screen. Also, the other verses like 1 Maccabean chapter 9 verse 27 talk about the great afflictions they received from the Greeks. And then in 2 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 11, it talks about the great perils. The great dangers they went through when they wrote a letter to the Jews who were in Egypt. And the Jews got into Egypt because of I think it was Ptolemy who brought them into Egypt. And that's how you got the Hebrew writing translated into Greek. And I believe that is called these sugapigrapher. Excuse my tongue on it, y'all. Okay? So I had copied this thing because Josephus break down the actual date of these events, letting us know what the feast of dedication or the feast of life was about. It's not about the menorah. That's a Jewish fable. Okay? It was about liberty and freedom to worship the Father and not being Hellenized. Okay? So when you start from 168 to 165, that was about 3 years. And when you start from 165 to 162, that was about 3 years. So take this time to pause the screen. But it was not about lighting the menorah. That is a Jewish fable. So again, he's confirming what Daniel wrote unto us, that it did come to pass. So he said here, came to pass and this desolation came to pass according to the prophecy of Daniel, which was given 408 years before. For he declared that the Macedonian would dissolve the worship for some time. That is your proof. This is again in Antiquities, Book 12, Chapter 7, Section 6. Now we get into that little chart I showed you about with the Greek captivity, but we already talked about that with the years. Now, when you get to the legs, they have a long time, which is the Romans, but then they're going to come back in the feet. So their time would go from 63 BC. If I got that right. Yeah, 63 BC to 7,499, which is the year of 2032 AD to 2033 AD. Okay? Remember, the last Antichrist, we will be given 3.5 years to spread his doctrine and get people to be in covenant with him. That's the purpose of the mark. Because when you learn about the mark of Christ, he put a cross on the saint's forehead for them to enter into paradise, because the cross go back to the Hebrew letter Tav, T-A-V, and Tav is the number 22. It represents the end. It also represents 400. It also represents you going into covenant with someone, to be joined to them, to bring two things together, to be married to them. Ownership. So we are owned by the Messiah because we are his bride. So those people who take the mark of the beast, they're going to be going in covenant with him. Therefore, he will own them. This is why they will be damned forever. This is why when they take the mark, they can never be redeemed. They can never be saved, because they are owned by Satan. They are in covenant with him. So they can never return back to the status of Adam. And the status of Adam is the sons and the daughters of Yah. The sons and the daughters of God. So here you see here, even in the time of Herod the Gripper, he's one of the rulers, okay? You will find in 41 to 44 AD or CE that even his time latter began the construction of the third wall, which was completed just at the beginning of the first Jewish war. You can find that information in the Wikipedia with the title of Walls of Jews. Walls of Jews. Take this time to pause your screen to get that link. Okay? So we already did the breakdown of Daniel 9 in this chart right here. You can take the time and pause your screen of what we talked about. So we figured out that the 42 weeks was from 402 BC to 32 AD or CE. 402 BC, okay, to 32 AD. So that's why you're seeing them saying about 400 years. Okay. All right. Now, this part here is dealing with the 1 week, which are the 7 years. This is very important because the work of Josephus gives you the biblical date when these things happen. So listen up. We knew the destruction of Jerusalem took place in 70 AD or CE. Okay? That is in the midst, in the middle of the candlestick. It's something else that's tied with that, but y'all going to have to read and get with the Father and get that understanding. So the biblical date when the daily sacrifice ceased was in the 4th month, the 17th day. Okay? In 70 AD. Okay? You can find that in War of the Jews 6.2.1, the 6th book, the 2nd chapter, section 1. Then on the 5th day and the 10th day, the same day as the Babylonians, y'all, because Josephus talk about that. The same day as the Babylonians under King Nebuchadnezzar, which was the 10th day in the 5th month. That's why we have these fasts, to keep a memory of these dates. Okay? Because they go in hand. We have the temple being burned. We have the abomination of desolation. They brought the eagle there. I know they brought Zeus there. And I think they did do some sacrifices with pigs. You can read that in the War of the Jews, book 5, chapter 4, section 5. Also War, book 6, chapter 6, section 1 through 4. And Antiquities, book 18, chapter 3, section 1. Now, when you have the complete destruction of the city of Jerusalem, known as the city of peace, that was in Elul, which is the 6th month, on the 8th day. That's a Sabbath day, y'all. Okay? And I won't let you, and this taking place all in 70 AD, so it took place in the 5,538 year from Adam, which is 38 years from the crucifixion. Let me make sure I do it right. Yeah, it's 38 years from the crucifixion and resurrection of Messiah. And this was done in the 2nd year of Vespasian reign. The 2nd year of Vespasian reign is 70 AD, because his first reign was 69 AD. So he reigned from 69 AD to 70 AD. So I'm going to put that in here. Okay, and I need to put my Adam year here. Let's see, 5,538. That was in the 6th day of Adam. Line it up. So Adam fell in the 6th day, male and female. So the second Adam come along in the 6th day from Adam to correct his mistake. In Father time, that would be the 11th day. Because you know in the Messiah name, one of the letters, I think, is Shin, represent destroyer. So he's coming back to take care of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, which is the son of perdition, the last Antichrist. And that video on the last Antichrist revealed, we have signs of who it could be. I put it like that. Okay. It said here, in 70 CE, as a result of the Roman siege during the First Jewish-Roman War, the walls were almost completely destroyed. Jerusalem would remain in ruins for 6 decades and without protective walls for over 2 centuries. That, y'all, that's not correct, because the Messiah said, not one stone be left unturned. So this is how we know there are 2 Jerusalem. One of the Amorites and one of the Jebusites. Okay? I did highlight this, that the pagan Roman city Aelia Capitona, which was built after 130 AD by Emperor Hadrian, was at first left without protective walls. Okay? So this is where your walls is coming from, because I'm going to tell y'all, the Father didn't let them build that wicked place on the where the city of Jerusalem was, of the Jebusite. He let them build it where the Amorites were. Okay? And they found the ruins of the temple of Jupiter, which is the temple of Satan, and the temple of Venus or Aphrodite was where the Holy Sepulchre Church is. Yeah. Everything's lining up. So, this is how you know spiritually there are Sodom and Egypt. There's a special relationship between America and Israel. We know America is Mystery Babylon. She's the whore that sits upon the beast. But we also know that they are also controlled by the synagogue of Satan. And it's not too hard to identify them, because they will have the star of Ephraim, which is the six-pointed star. For we know Satan is represented by two things, either Saturn or Venus. Saturn is your six-pointed hexagram star, and Venus is your five-pointed star, your Baphomet worship. Nothing new beneath the sun. Baal and Ashtaroth worship would go back to the days of Nimrod and Sumeria's son Tammuz. Like I said, nothing different beneath the sun. I have done a lot of talking in this video, but what I'm telling y'all, the 2300 days are completed. The 1290 days are completed. The Daniel 70 weeks are completed. Okay? Do not let anybody guide you wrong. The Father left us the prophets. The Father left us his scribes. The Father left us so many resources to prove unto us that these things have come to pass. Just recently, the 400-year prophecy has been fulfilled. For the so-called blacks here in America have been identified of being in this land for 400 years, from 1619 to 2019. This is the time of the British. Okay, that has been fulfilled. And as it has been prophesied by the high priest Ezra in the Apocrypha, he said, until Zion affliction is fulfilled, then I will visit the earth, meaning that he's judging. And we can see that now. Take this time now to meditate on what I'm saying. And basically what I'm saying, we don't have a lot of time now. Time is really running down. We are at the feet, getting to the end of the toes of Nebuchadnezzar's image. Soon the world of Esau, which is Rome, will end. And the world to follow after Esau, which is Rome, the iron, that gets his power and authority from Satan. Whether they may call him Zeus, they may call him Jupiter, or Baal, Ashtaroth, Nimrod, Sumerius, or Tammuz, whatever name they call him, they still go back to Satan worship. For Satan can change himself into a male or a female. He has that power to do that. This is how he can change himself into an angel of light. For he's a liar and a deceiver. He's the father of lies. He's the father of deception, the father of darkness, the father of death and destruction. Like I said, he's complete opposite of the Father, the Son, and wisdom, and the Holy Spirit. Okay? We don't have a lot of time. We are at the toes of Nebuchadnezzar's image. We are coming to the end. That's what Jacob holding on to his brother heel. That's what that represents. The heel, the foot, represent the end. Okay? But the hand of Jacob represents a new beginning that's going to supplant or take the place of Esau, because Jacob's seed, which is Yahusha Jesus Christ, he's going to take the place of Edom and Satan, okay, and Rome. And he's going to bring forth his father kingdom. But this kingdom going to be eternal, and it's going to be righteous. Choose this day whom you shall serve. Either you're going to serve the Most High God, or you're going to serve Satan. Either you're going to receive his son, or you're going to receive the spirit of the Antichrist. Choose whom this day you shall serve. Remember to come into the covenant, follow the instructions in Romans chapter 10. Be ye baptized of the water and the spirit, for we must be born of the water and the spirit. If you have no one to baptize you by water, you can baptize yourself. Exercise your faith with works. For the water, the earth, and the heavens can be your witness unto the Father. For the Holy Spirit baptism, you don't have no righteous apostle to give it to you. Father got you covered in that. All he said, ask in my son's name, Yahusha The Messiah, Jesus Christ, and I will give it unto you. And he give it according to your heart, your faith, and your works. Because Father ain't no fool. He can see who you really are. Time to humble yourself. Time to rebuke the spirit of pride, the spirit of jealousy, the spirit of iniquity, the spirit of intimidation. And it's time for you to get the Father's spirit. Get right. Love you all. Shalom.